Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in? Hi guys, this is Michele Marie Dalene. Hail Mary meets you. Today we're going to talk about continuing on with our how to start it in video segment. Last time we talked about lighting and the camera. Today we're going to talk about location, and location. There are different places you can do video. Obviously, you can do it on site. Let's say, for example, you're at a concert. You want to talk about the concert. Not a problem. But maybe, just maybe, you are at a location, and at the time, you didn't actually put any video in, and you wanted to take the segment and bring it back and edit it down later. And maybe you wanted to have a place where you can present that, a room where like a news anchor's desk. Well, that's what this is. This is actually kind of a newsroom setting. Right now, we do not have the chroma key green on right now, but it's because we're going to be talking about the studio itself, not so much the special effects. It's certainly is part of the studio, but it's not the only one. I got little notes here to help me out here. But now, when you're doing your studio design, the question that sometimes comes up is this DIY studio, number one, is it going to be just used for studio, or is it used for other things as well? Clearly, if it's used for more than just a single function, then this multi-purpose area will have to be able to swing things out, put cameras away, take lights down. In some cases, you can leave them up, especially if you're using for task lighting. This room is a multi-purpose room. This is not just a studio. This is also kind of a staging area where I work on projects on occasion. There's my tools in the closet, and there's a variety of objects here. And just looking here at my notes here, and obviously, so given this the exclusive nature of the room, if it's, as I said, if it's just for a studio, that means you can leave your cameras, your lights, your props, and everything in your set can be left up, and always will be there for every shoot. So you don't have to rechange, redesign, relay out every time someone wants to use, say, if it's a TV room, someone wants you to watch TV, then you got to take all the stuff down, put it away. And if it's a family room, same thing. So where would be a good location if you wanted to have a dedicated studio? Well, the first thing is that you need to consider the area of just how much room do you really need. That depends on a variety of tasks, including what kind of studio work are you going to do. If you're going to do like an anchor desk like this is, kind of a simplified anchor area, your room is going to be a lot simpler, a lot less complicated. The workflow is going to be pretty straightforward. The camera shots are going to be pretty much only one camera, pretty much focused at the newscaster or videocaster. If it's, say, for example, a cooking show, if that's what you want to do, then things get a little more tricky, because then you might have to have two people. You as the cook, or if you're not a cook and somebody else is the cook, that's fine, and a camera person, okay? And that camera person has got to be able to follow the cooking all the way from beginning to end, and that gets a little more complicated, especially if it's you're the only person running the whole show. In my case, that's exactly what happens. But thanks to our technology, as we talked about with cell phones before and selfies, we don't really have as much of the same problem as we used to, because now we can use something called a selfie stick, which really is not that much more complicated than a monopod that you hold your iPhone or your Android phone at a certain distance from you after you start recording so that you can get you in the shot. The only problem with that is it still limits you, because that means that you got one hand is taking up holding the monopod out, and the other hand is going to be on a hand. So if you need to do something with two hands, that immediately creates problems too. And that's more of a location issue, but it certainly does, again, make sense where a studio could be advantageous if you're going to be doing things like cooking demonstrations and things like that. A dedicated room for a cooking demo would work out good. Obviously, in a home, that would be the kitchen. The problem is, of course, unless you happen to be in a home where you have a fairly quiet family that doesn't constantly barge in, constantly the phone doesn't always ring every 5 seconds. The kitchen is, unfortunately, most homes is fairly busy, and if it's an open flow kitchen, and then of course you're gonna have the noise of the kids playing the video games. You're gonna have the noise of the TV. You're gonna have the noise of people walking in and out, up and down the stairs and things like that. Cats getting in the room. Yeah, right, Mr. Kitty. So obviously, interference could be a problem. So, let's see. Next one is, what kind of videos to do in the studio? Museum studio, like this one, simplest design. You only need one camera, a desk for the anchor to put the papers on, a microphone. If it's a working microphone, or it might be just a prop. Mine's a working microphone here, but some people will actually use tie clip microphones, and then they just have a microphone on the desk as a prop. It's your choice. You can have. We'll talk about props too, because that's part of the studio environment. Product demos like the newsroom studio, but you might have two cameras being used. One to show the person holding the device that they're demoing, and then maybe another camera going into a tight shot to show the screen or to display the device close up. Again, for most cases, there might be two people getting you as either the talent or the camera person, and of course the talent. If you're going to go more than two people for a product demo, it better be a pretty big product demo. For most people, two people is really all you need. One person can do it by themselves, but if I've seen it on YouTube, the results have been far from spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. Cooking demonstration, we talked about that. If you're going to be doing cooking demos, you're going to obviously want to have cameras, either stationary cameras positioned over a variety of tasks, such as maybe a camera over your prep board, a camera over your range, maybe a camera pointing at the refrigerator. As I told you before, with inexpensive security cameras, that's not a big deal. In fact, most of the standard cameras that you can find that can mount on the wall or the ceiling for this would be perfect, considering the fact that they are small and they're inexpensive. Once the cameras are preset, you don't have to worry about messing them up. It's just like Ground P.O. would say, set it and forget it. Well, don't forget it. You are going to be using a video switcher to select between the camera angles, but that's just popping a couple buttons versus physically having to walk around and trying to shoot different angles. If that's the way you choose to go, that's the way you choose to go. Other hobbies. If you're a woodworker, just like with the studio of cooking, you're going to be wanting to have probably multiple camera angles, say, for example, over your workbench, maybe a camera showing you at the circular saw, radial arm saw, jigsaw, MIG or TIG welder if you're in the metal. Obviously, there will be certain safety precautions to consider. Obviously, I want you to make sure you can focus on using your tools safely. So if you do have to remove any guards on your appliances to show demonstrations, please exercise extreme caution. I don't want to see you lose fingers on a demonstration on YouTube, but I'm sure it's happened. And unfortunately, I know from my dad didn't use too many guards on his tools, but then he grew up when there was no such thing as too many safety precautions for power tools back in the 40s and 50s. Now, of course, I'm going through these notes here. Okay, we're going to talk about props now. We do have video equipment on here, but I will just talk briefly about that. Video equipment, obviously, is how are you going to get the video from your studio to your computer or to your videotape or to your DVD tapes? The answer is pretty straightforward, actually. You take the tapes, you input them in. If you're using a USB camera or if you're using a DV cam, those little tiny cameras, mini cams, they plug into the USB port. Then, of course, you won't be editing live video. You'll be editing video segments you already shot. But whatever you choose, as I said, we already hashed on cameras. I'm not going to rehash cameras again. Please watch the last video and the video that's coming up, where we discuss, actually last week, we talked about the variety of ways that we use our closed circuit television cameras to do videos. So I'm not going to say much more about that. Props depend is gonna make either make or break your set. Most cases, you have two kinds of props. You have just decorative props. For example, maybe you have a potted plant on the back of the set. It may not be a real plant. It might be a real plant. It doesn't matter. It might be a series of books on a bookshelf. Again, they might be real books or it might just be pictures of books. It doesn't matter which one the case is, considering that most standard video is only two-dimensional anyway, and there is no sense of depth perception. So you can easily make it look like you're living in, say, in a big giant library, even though if you're just in a tiny little room that really doesn't have any books at all. Active props would include my microphone, which is a real working microphone, which is used to record the sound. The headphones are real props. They are props, but they're really they're used to monitor the sound to make sure it works. You will sometimes see me slip these things on like this. That's to make sure that the sound is recording, that I can hear it through the earphones, and that way I know what's going out. Other props you might find on a newsroom set includes a computer, terminal, a laptop, telephone. These may be used for a normal program presentation, and so therefore I really would call them more of active props that you'll be using for working operations, which is very different than inactive props. After all, most people are not going to take a potted plant from the set and start demonstrating plant care with it. Unless, of course, that's what you are doing the segment at. Then your inactive prop can become an active prop for a demonstration of, say, plant care. But that's a good example of where sometimes props can be a help and a hindrance, because you get too many props in the set and it looks too cluttered, and then your average person is going to wonder where is the main focus. And that's another thing too, is who is the main focus? Is it you? Am I the focus? In this case, I'm kind of. Really it's the room that's supposed to be the focus, but that's just the way the camera got set up. The room didn't quite get as much exposure as I would like to have it to have. Although I've done many videos on my studio, so we'll do another one just on the studio. And also, we're going to show a contrast of my studio versus that of the local public access channel. I have contacted them and they have agreed to let me to do a video segment on that studio, which I will present. Hi guys, this is the local public access channel 13 studio. I am set up as if I were being shot with their cameras right now. We have their studio lights on, and you can see that they have a chroma key green screen background like we do. It's much more bigger than my apartment. It's about 24 foot by about 24 foot approximately. And I showed you briefly, talked about briefly with the different microphone. I won't take a second time because we have a lot to show really quick. This is what they call a shotgun mic. Sometimes you'll see these mounted above hidden about the subject. You should mount it on a boom. This is good for getting more or less just the foreground and not too much of the background. This has a windscreen on it, which is very important for shotguns. This is a handheld. You are familiar with this from my studio, where we're using our SM57. This is theirs. I don't know what brand it is, but same basic thing. I just don't have it in the stand right now. I got a tie-clip lapel microphone on, as if I were doing a taping. So that way you could have multiple microphones for your audience. Now, let's walk around real quickly and show you some of the other things in here that make this place stand out. And first of all, as I said, this is bigger. So you can see more or less, you got your lighting around here, you got your green screen background, and over here we have our 2 cameras. These are, of course, much bigger than mine. They are set up right now for standard definition and record at NTSC format as we record in PAL, which is the difference. We have 2 cameras, actually 3 cameras. One here, one here, one here, and we have a monitor and a time prompter to let you know how much time you have. And probably, as always, have to use a teleprompter. You can use teleprompting too, I think. Oh. Well, anyway, now, unlike mine, this setup here, they can adjust the lights. They have a control panel that allows them over here next to here that shows you the different control board compared to my system, which is basically just plugged in with using regular household extension cords. You see this is a lot more sophisticated. But basically you can select different light sources and things like that, and they can dim, brighten, change colors, whatever they need to do. Now, last thing I'm going to show you is their actual production room. Really quickly here. Trust me, kid, compared to mine, this is way more than I got. Again, you have your audio mixing unit here, which would be like my Shure M68, except this is much bigger, has a lot more channels. Your video editing stations that edit the video. You got your camera selection equipment that selects which cameras you're using. It can be set for different shots. They can also edit down pictures and put videos from different sources. So you see, compared to my studio, this is a lot bigger, and this is more of a professional studio. This is definitely not something the average person is going to have. But if you got it, you got it. That's all you need to know. See you back at the studio. Okay, now as you can see, that studio is pretty big. It has got a lot of things going in it. It's got this chroma key like mine do on the wall in the background. They have multiple types of lighting fixtures, 2 cameras, microphone mixing panel, control board. In the production room, which is a separate room off the studio, is certainly a lot more complicated and sophisticated than my studio. However, when you compare that they got a budget from the local cable company of, possibly a couple $100,000, they certainly can afford to buy better gear than I can. Now, what about decor? Obviously, the kind of room you're going to choose is going to make a big difference too. Now, this studio here is the formal studio because it's got access to the multimedia. But the other studio, the old studio, which you sometimes see me use, is kind of informal, kind of warm fuzzies. You got your stuffed animals and your couch and your microphone, and obviously, in that case, that room is actually a lot smaller. The camera actually still stays in both rooms. It's in the old studio and just aims into this studio. But in that case, that room is more for like informal gatherings of friends and family and people I want to have relaxed, more at ease, and kind of not worrying about thinking about where the camera is and all this standard formal ritual, studio design. Obviously, so color is obviously, in the way the studio is designed, is going to make a difference on how your video feels to your watchers as well. Let's talk about something related to the decor and something related to the location, because this is something we just demonstrated. How much interruption are you going to be getting in your studio when the phone rings and things like that? Like I said, some people may actually want an area that if it's an exclusive use area where they could either A, have no phone at all, or the studio could have a phone that is set to silent, which may be useful for some things. Well, now let's get to the last piece, and then we'll get to the video demonstrations of my studio. Let's talk about the different kinds of lighting systems, okay? Natural lighting, which includes light from windows, skylights, things like that. Good news about this, it doesn't cost as much to run. After all, it's free. The problem is it varies throughout the day, and of course, depending on the weather. So that will mean that your camera exposure is going to change accordingly. If you do entirely under exclusive lighting, you might need to choose only do videos during certain times of the day to get certain types of work like you want with shadows and things like that. If you can deal with that, if you feel comfortable using just natural lighting, no artificial lighting at all, it's probably the cheapest, easiest way to go, but it's certainly not exactly always the most predictable, especially if you want to do a video and happens to be raining that day. Then your video is going to clearly look different than when it's a sunny day and the sun is kind of bouncing off your neighbor's house into your room. You don't really want the sun directly blazing in your living room or where you are, because it's going to be very difficult to adjust the exposure to look good. Many studios use artificial lighting. Artificial lighting is basically you have whichever kind of lighting you choose, incandescent, halogen, which is also incandescent, so I'll call it incandescent because that's what it is. HMI, which is a high-intensity discharge lamp, which is another choice. LED CFL, gaslight, why not? Limelight, which is really from gaslighting. Whatever lighting you choose, it's up to you. I don't care what kind of light you choose. As I said, you can use the light of a candle if you really want, but as long as you want it, if you're comfortable using that, that's okay. And for some moods, that for some programs, that might be what you want. More than often in this apartment here, the lighting here is kind of mixed. The lighting right now, there's a little bit of lighting coming in from the window behind the camera that's kind of assisting the camera a little bit with exposure, along with the key light, which is on in front of me. In addition, we have a skylight above the green screen that is also providing some light coming down right now, so it provides some additional luminance as well. More than often, you will, unless you're working in a room with blackout curtains and it's pitch black, you will probably be dealing with either a natural light or you will be dealing with artificial light in addition to natural light. You could also certainly use existing light photography, which is really kind of a variation of both combined, where you basically may have windows, plus you might have table lamps and floor lamps and ceiling lamps on it. In other words, you didn't bring any additional light fixtures in, it's just what's there in the room at the time. Sometimes that can be a really nice effect, and you see that when I'm at McDonald's. That's the kind of effect we get, as I didn't bring any light fixtures in. Same thing with the soup kitchen, where I usually do my videos in front of the window, but I do also understand that is also got its deficiencies as well. If the lighting's wrong, you can see that my skin looks kind of unpleasant. The shadows can be really long and pretty crappy. Now, lastly, sound equipment. Well, we didn't talk about that much, so let's talk about it real quick. Unless it's a limited reason where you're not going to have sound, and most people are going to have sound in the studio. And depending on how complicated, how sophisticated you want to get, you can either use a boom microphone. That's a microphone that is actually out of the way of your subject, but is actually picking up the sound. Or it might be a tie clip or lapel microphone that attaches to the clothing, which is certainly fine for if you got one or two people. And then of course, if you might just have a standard desk microphone like I got here. if it's just a single microphone, then you gotta be careful and make sure to try to get as many people as you possibly can, and that you want to have the sound be picked up on. This again is where it's really a good idea to know how many microphones you're gonna need. You don't want to go too many microphones crazy here. I mean, for example, we have in our studio, we have 2 microphones we can use, so we use them carefully and to selectively determine who's going to be recorded and at what time. Right now, I'm the only one in here, so the other microphone is off, but the other microphone is also not on the table. I think for the time being, we're going to go ahead, and now, let's get to a couple of the different studios. Yes, the studio. How many ways have we been in these 2 studios? That's right, there's 2 of them in here, and we're going to cover both at the same time. This here is the informal studio. This is where I sometimes hang out. We have our camera, we have our, it's shared between the 2 rooms. And here again, we have our natural window with the light coming in. We have some existing light fixtures in the ceiling. Of course, our set, which is the couch, the blue material behind, is so that my hair doesn't blend into the wall. And this, we don't really have any props on it right now. I guess you can call my cat a prop. He's always kind of in the picture one way or another. Now, let's get to the formal studio. Why is this called a formal studio? Well, the reason this is called a formal studio is you got your anchor desk. Okay, it looks like a mess, I know. Let's get a microphone. Right here, this is our microphone. We have our headphones that we can use to monitor the recording sound as recorded. We have my chair. We have our chroma key green screen back here. This is when we use background. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we do. It depends on the video situation. It actually have 2 different pieces of chroma key. We have the green. We also have the blue material here. So when I'm not using the green, I can pull this off, and then we have the blue background, which is just a bed sheet. We have our lights, as I mentioned before. This is that maintain the light for both the backdrop and me. We also have our key light over here. So that's this room. This is also how we import our sound. Because we have 2 microphones, we need to be able to input multiple sound. You've seen this before, or the mixers. I don't need to go into those again. That just bore you to tears. So this studio here is where we have our nice informal gatherings. It's kind of nice. It's like a comfortable room. You can sit down on the couch. The microphone will be like this. So I'll be like I'm doing right now, holding up the camera to my face. And then this would be, you get advantage to this is, you can have 3 or 4 people on the couch. Cats can join us and not necessarily take over the shot. And so that's the way we use this room. Is for when we want to have those kind of nice hangouts without having to make it look like too structured. Now, next thing I'm going to show you, as I've showed you in many videos, I'm only going to focus on this briefly, is as you saw at the cable channel over the production room was really complicated. That's mine. It's just a computer. A computer, the printer, that's how we edit on our videos. So that's it. That's all there is to my studio. And I hope that these ideas that I've showed you will help you to make the best work of your own studio designs. Have fun. Don't be afraid. If you screw up, that's okay. You'll always redo it again. Alright? Bye-bye, everybody.